Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today, we're going to start off southwest of Bakhmut to an apparent Ukrainian attack that is underway against Russian forces, specifically the Russian 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade in this locale here. So it appears that the Ukrainian goal, the Ukrainian objective, is to seize this town right here, Klishvika and Andriivka, these two towns. Now, the Ukrainians have not taken those towns yet. We are looking at two, possibly three elements of two, possibly three Ukrainian brigades committed to this operation. And it looks like they're trying to defeat this Russian salient, which is made up predominantly of forces of the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, being supported by Wagner formations and elements of the 106th Guards Airborne Division. Specifically, you have two regiments. To the south of the 72nd, you have the 51st Guards Airborne Regiment of the 106th Guards Airborne. And then to the north, you have the 137th Guards Airborne Regiment of the 106th Guards Airborne as well. So again, it looks as if the Ukrainians have made headway, be it just a few kilometer push. If you look at the distance in this little blue area right here where the Ukrainians made their northern push, and you start from this area and you go forward, you're quite looking at an area that was taken by the Ukrainians of about 829 meters, under a kilometer. In the south, again, if you look at the starting point, let's get out of this real quick and then redo that. You're looking at essentially a 996 meter push where the Russians fell back to this tree line right here. So this is a tactical battle. This is not a strategic battle. Bakhmut is not being threatened. It is the area southwest of Bakhmut, specifically the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade. If we look at the deployment map of the Ukrainian forces that are involved, right now, it looks like they outnumber Russian forces. So if we look here, you've got the 80th Air Assault Brigade, very good Ukrainian unit. To the south of that, you have the 3rd Assault Brigade, Azov. This is a National Guard unit. Now, that unit appears to be the primary force involved in this offensive. And then also, you have elements of the 12th Separate Tank Brigade. And then additionally, further to the south, the 28th Mechanized Brigade. So essentially, three Ukrainian brigades attempting this operation, what looks like an effort against these two towns here. Now, when we say breakthrough, what does that mean? Did the Ukrainians achieve a breakthrough? No, they didn't. They pushed Russian lines back here and here, but their apparent goal of enveloping the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade was not achieved. We believe that essentially there could be 1 to 2 companies in this area and another company of Russian forces in this area. So about 3 Russian companies were initially engaged in these battles. So we can say when the Ukrainians talk that the entire brigade was wiped out, that's simply not true. The 72nd Brigade is essentially comprised of 3 motorized rifle battalions and a tank battalion. So 4 battalions. You have essentially 3 to 4 companies making up each battalion. So right now there was about 3 companies engaged in this endeavor. And we know now that the Russians are bringing up additional forces from the 106th Guards Airborne Division. They're also bringing up Spetsnaz forces as well. So again, this is still evolving. It's still taking place. The Ukrainians can't declare victory. Now, obviously, they can state that they've taken this area that is highlighted in blue, and that's fine. In their fields that they have pushed the Russians back. But again, when we compare that to what's happening in Bakhmut, again, you don't see this blue area being retaken in Bakhmut. Because again, these forces up here are in a difficult endeavor right now, these Ukrainian forces. So you're not seeing a counterattack into Bakhmut. You're seeing a counterattack south-southwest of Bakhmut taking place. And if you look at the recent changes in the front line, let's just have a look at that. What's happened? So you can see where this was actually disputed area that the Ukrainians took. So look, grayed out, and now it's blue. Blue to gray. So this was contested area that at least this mapping service, Deep State, is saying for whatever reason that the Ukrainians have taken control of this area. And they're identifying it as if it was area that the Russians controlled prior. It was all contested. It was never, at least to Deep State, never acknowledged as it was being controlled by Russian forces. Do you understand what I'm saying? Hopefully. Again, area in orange controlled by Russian forces. So this area here was acknowledged as controlled by Russian forces and then pushed back. So the 10th and then the 12th. So then they're claiming this as area taken. So I think it's reasonable that they can claim this area is taken by Ukrainian forces, but probably not for this area because it doesn't look like it was ever controlled by Russian forces. It had always been contested, so they're just saying that the Ukrainians are possibly in control of this area now. And again, you're looking at an open field. So, take it for what it's worth. If you look at from 5-4 to present, if you look at the battles that have taken place in Bakhmut proper, and what we're talking about now is it would be Western Bakhmut as we forward this. So again, look. In this area, orange to gray. Back up. Area taken. Area taken. And then kind of here we're at now. So again, I mean, I get that because in all probability, Zelensky, the big man, has put a pause on any sort of major offensive operation towards Kyiv. They're probably looking for some sort of concession prize in the form of attacking the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade, and they probably feel that they're in a position to counterattack in this area and have some sort of success and create some sort of narrative around that success, when the reality is, again, they've taken an open field and they've pushed Russian forces back essentially just under a kilometer in each of these areas. Now, what does the Russian force construct look like in this area? Obviously, it's the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade. But to say that they destroyed the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade when taking these two fields, I don't believe that's reasonable, and you can't really do that. And obviously, it looks like the objective are these two towns here and here. And right now, the Ukrainians have not met that objective. They have not broken through to these towns. They do not occupy Andriivka. They are not threatening Andriivka and then threatening to move from the south to north and threaten the southern sector of Bakhmut proper. It's not happened. Now, is that their intent? And could this be what the Ukrainians are looking to do? Possibly, but right now they haven't done it. They pushed the Russians back about a kilometer here. But outside of that, that's about the movement that we've seen on the battlescape. Now, if you listen to mainstream media, you hear that they've broken through the Russian lines and the Russians are retreating and blah, 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 blah. It's not happened. Again, they haven't taken a town. They haven't taken these two towns, and they've pushing these areas back a little bit. But again, in all probability, this is just to create that narrative of success because they've hit the pause button on the Order Kyiv offensive. Again, their original goal was an attack south, seize control of Tokmak, and then ultimately Melitopol. And as we know, Kiev hit the pause button. Probably not ready. Too many casualties. Not enough forces yet. We're not confident, so we're hitting the pause button. And that is what happened. But I think right now the press, the media here in the United States is, and especially the content providers that have fled from Ukraine to Western Europe, are now reporting that again the Ukrainians have broken through the Russian lines and the Russians are in full retreat. But I mean, this is what's happened right now, essentially. Again, the Ukrainians have taken this area, these open fields, and then to the south, to this tree line right here. So the battle is still going on. It's still happening. Is it possible that the Ukrainians find success and push the Russians back and threaten the southern sector of Bakhmut? Yeah, it's possible. Absolutely. But they haven't done it yet. This battle is still ongoing. So I think the fat lady has not sung yet, so to speak. So we'll see what happens. But that's where we kind of set for today. We now know that the British, the United Kingdom, have already handed over the Storm Shadow cruise missile to the Ukrainians. It's reported that it's possible that a couple of Ukrainian Su-24s have been retrofitted to fire the Storm Shadow cruise missile. So it'll be interesting to see when and if the Ukrainians use that weapon system. It's possible that they've already used the weapon system. But again, based on what aircraft are certified to fire the Storm Shadow, officially, it's not the Su-24. It's only Western aircraft right now, Western European aircraft, that have been certified by the manufacturer of the Storm Shadow and Scalp to fire that system. So again, it's possible that the Poles have retrofitted a Su-24, but that's what the Ukrainians would need to use to launch it. They would have to launch it from some sort of aircraft. That's how the Storm Shadow is designed to be launched. Now, the French have looked at using them on some of their naval ships, as well as a basically a sea-launched cruise missile. But by and large, the Storm Shadow is launched from an aircraft, and we just don't know what aircraft that is right now. We believe, at least the Ukrainians are claiming, that it could be a Su-24. So again, and the Ukrainians are also saying that they will only use the Storm Shadow against Russian targets in areas that the Russians have occupied. And they will not use the Storm Shadow against what they perceive as Russia proper. But again, that means they probably will use the Storm Shadow against Crimea. They will try to target Crimea. Now the question is how effective will Russian air defense systems be in engaging the Storm Shadow? Again, the Storm Shadow is not like a hypersonic or sonic missile. It is a slow-flying cruise missile, much like a Tomahawk, that has some stealthy properties that, in all probability, the Russians would have the ability to shoot those systems down. So ultimately, it's a wait and see when the Ukrainians use it. Maybe they already have, maybe they haven't. Hard to say right now, but because of the nature of this conflict, it's difficult to obtain that kind of information. But that's where we sit for today. We'll continue to watch what is happening across the battlescape. We will continue to watch the area south-southwest of Bakhmut and see what happens in that area as well. Thank you for joining us today. More to come very, very soon. Have a good day.